Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Before we dive in, let's go over a brief summary of this business. It is an Amazon Associates display advertising and affiliate business created in June of 2019 in the culinary and kitchenware niches, and the average monthly revenue for the business is $5,560 and makes an average of $4,122 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are domain and all-site content and files, employee contracts, and social media accounts and pages, which include Pinterest, Twitter, and Facebook. So for everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 58268 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So that's a brief overview of the business for sale. Let's hear from the seller with me today. So welcome to the show, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your business. So to start us off, can you tell us a little about your background in building and running online businesses?
To be completely honest with you, I didn't have much of a background all before I started this website. And the only reason that I started this website was because I wanted to find some way that I could overlap my natural interests and to find out some way that I could make money from it, which, to be honest with you, I didn't think existed, or at least I didn't think I had the original capital needed to be able to start a business like that. So I went to school for a food-related degree, and I always loved food. And so I tried to find a way that I could make money with that in mind without basically any initial investment, or at least very low. And after some research, I found that creating a website and finding ways to get traffic to that website could in turn lead to some income, or at least a side hustle. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that story too, because maybe at some point during your trajectory in college, the question came up maybe from well-intentioned family or just people about how you're going to make money from a specific major or career path. So I'm not sure if that came up, but it's awesome to see that you did do something with that, even if it's a side hustle and a profitable side hustle at that in the food space. So very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you've had this business since 2019. So why are you deciding to sell this now instead of keeping it and growing it?
You know, I loved creating the site. And I loved getting it to a point where it was streamlined, And I think at some point, it just became somewhat of a chore. And I always wanted to make sure, especially with something that had to do with something that I was so interested in, I wanted to make sure that I always loved doing what I was doing. And that's not to say I didn't love what I was doing or I stopped loving what I'm doing now. It just has more to do with somewhat of the monotony of trying to stand up to Google standards. It just became a lot more about other things than what I had originally intended the website for. And that's just kind of what happens, it seems like, when you create a website. And it started out ultimately that I just wanted to write about something that I love. And then after, the wheels got turning and I figured out that I could, rank for some of these bigger keywords, it narrowed my focus to a point that I didn't like it. I don't know if that makes complete sense, but it narrowed it to the point where I started having to do things that I wouldn't necessarily do on my own, or if I wasn't aiming towards traffic. So yeah, it just shifted, and I want to make sure that it's not a negative quality. It's just not something that I want to spend the majority of my working days doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I've heard that even to create a parallel to YouTube, for example, where people get into it because they love either the topic that they're discussing or just the act of creating something, creating content. And then they see that they get traffic for specific keywords or specific topics, and they feel pressure to keep going in that direction. And it just becomes different. So yeah, completely understand.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
All right. So it seems like you definitely learned a lot of valuable things about online business, and you've experimented with different things. What did you learn from building this business that just seemed to work?
From the get-go, I think knowing my goal from the beginning was probably the greatest thing that I could have done, because the goal was always to make content that was worth reading, right? Or answered questions that were commonly asked in the food niche. And that was always our goal. And it seemed like that eventually lined up with what Google inevitably wants, which is to get people in front with the best answer to their problem. And so having that mindset of just trying to create useful information, it doesn't matter what Google ends up doing as far as their algorithm. They're always trying to get people in front of the most knowledgeable information, or at least the information that answers their question quickly and thoroughly. And I think that's always been our prerogative, which has helped us stay steady despite Google's, unpredictability.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So was there anything you tried with this business that didn't work out so well?
Yeah, there was a time where we were trying to streamline things a little too much. Like efficiency became more important than, the content, the other things that are supposed to be the primary goal. We started outsourcing SEO and outsourcing it for, unfortunately, much cheaper than it's worth. We didn't realize the amount of money it was going to take to run a white hat SEO campaign. And so we went for the cheaper option, thinking that like some of these companies were reputable, and they are. I can't really say anything negative about them, but they just didn't do much for the site. And sometimes I have a little paranoia that they actually had negative implications on the site. It's kind of hard to track exactly because, it's all unpredictable. Google can change the algorithm, and then all of a sudden you can go way down for reasons that are just completely unknown to you. So I think outsourcing to some of the cheaper SEO companies was definitely a mistake, but, a mistake that eventually we found a solution to. And we found ways to do SEO on our own that didn't take up a whole ton of time as it previously had.
Nice. So you built this business in 2019. So it's been a couple of years. Can you describe the amount and the type of work now that you do on this business for maintenance? So you mentioned SEO. Yeah. What would you say you do in your day-to-day?
So my day-to-day usually consists of, I format the posts from the writers, right? And I guess I'll start from there. I will create outlines for the writers based off of keyword research that I do. Sometimes I do keyword research, and sometimes I honestly just want an article up because I'm interested, or even some of my colleagues are interested. But most of the time, I'll do some keyword research. I'll find keywords in the food niche that I think are high traffic, low competition, and also just need a good, solid answer to. And then I will create an outline, and I will implement those keywords into that outline. My writers will take it from there, and usually within a couple days, they'll get back to me, and I'm the one who formats. So our website uses Thrive Architect, which is great for custom work if you're trying to make your website exactly the way that you want it to. Unfortunately, there is quite a learning curve with it. So trying to teach it to some of my other freelancers just seemed like more time than I wanted to spend doing that. And I really didn't mind the formatting. So I spend most of my days doing keyword research, outline creation, and then formatting the post. And then once in a while, I will do guest post outreach for the site. Besides the natural backlinks that come to the site just from having, good content, we'll do guest post campaigns where we'll reach out to similar food sites with some high authority and offer, a food article from a food scientist. And usually we get, an awesome anchor text that we're looking for and the nice backlink in the middle of the page. And it works out nicely. So that's about the majority that I do. And I would say maybe 8 to 10 hours a week is what I spend on the site myself.
Awesome. So it seems like you have a pretty streamlined process. If you were to keep the business, what are some ways you would try to grow it?
I'm sure everybody knows about this, but maybe I shouldn't bring it up. They have the new AI writing tool,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
One of them is Jarvis. And if I were to go back or continue to work my site right now, I would definitely start creating more content with something like Jarvis. I obviously wouldn't just leave it to Jarvis, but from what I've been able to see, it's such a powerful tool and the writing and the grammar is so good. A lot of the times Jarvis does it better than I can do it. Our new job would be basically fact checking Jarvis, editing the content, and trying to direct Jarvis the best way that we could. But that would make things way more efficient without sacrificing quality. So I would definitely do that. And then I would definitely spend more time instead of doing SEO, and we would try to get backlinks to our homepage. And we'd also try to get backlinks, just like random pages before we really understood how SEO works. But as we grew as a company, we found that getting backlinks to the money-making pages is just the smart move and something that we somehow overlooked, even though it's obvious. But I would definitely devote more time to getting backlinks to some of our higher payout pages for sure.
Got it. Two very valuable opportunities. So with any opportunities, of course, though, comes risk. So what do you think are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
I never thought this site was going to have me losing sleep, but there were a few nights where, like just the unpredictability of Google, it's kind of a lot to bear. And the only real risk that I can see is if you neglect the site, it's going to go down in traffic, it's going to go down in income, and it's not a worthwhile investment if you neglect it. With that said, even if you did all the work in the world and for some reason, Google just changed everything, I mean, there's always that chance that it can go from really good to really bad. And that's kind of the reality that anybody who is in this industry has to deal with. It's kind of just a part of it. But as far as comparing our site to other sites that, make money a similar way, I think that our prerogative is always to make high quality, good content that answers the reader's questions. And I think Google is just trying to get closer and closer to that ideal. So I personally believe, as long as somebody nurtures this site, the only way that you can go is up, as long as Google continues to try to appeal to its audience. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. And if you didn't mention this, I was going to follow up and just say pretty much everything that you mentioned. It's what anybody in the content space has to deal with, the Google algorithm and making sure that the site is resilient and playing well with the algorithm. So it's part of being in the online space. So well put.
Right.
Okay. So a few housekeeping questions to wrap this up. How much support are you willing to offer a new buyer?
So I know you probably want a specific amount of days. I'm pretty open to just ensuring that the buyer gets as much help as they need until the process is understood and streamlined. I know that, everybody has a different website. They all use, WordPress or this, that, or this builder. And I think, there's kind of a steep learning curve for it all. So I'm completely willing to help somebody get to a point where they're 100% comfortable. And if they come or if they're confronted with hiccups along the way, they're more than welcome to reach out to me. So I don't know if I can put a certain amount of days on it, but I'm open to anything.
Yeah, that works. Okay, and next question is, would you commit to a non-compete?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, awesome. And are you open to something like an earnout?
I would prefer cash up front. If I really like the buyer and I think they're going to do something really good with the site, I'm open to it.
Great. And putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
I think just making sure that when you're buying a site like this, you're buying it because one, it's an investment, and two, you want to provide some kind of quality service for whoever your target is, right? Which in this case would be anybody asking food questions. And I think this site has an extremely good foundation. I know that there's a lot of sites out there who simply focus on the face value SEO. And I think a lot of them do really well in the short term. But I think going back to the fluctuations in Google, those people are the ones who are the most impacted from those Google updates. And I think a site like ours, again, I think the quality and the solid foundation that we've created with this and the credentials of the writers that explicitly advertise on the site. I think it all looks really good. And I think overall, if we had Google employees manually going over this site, I think that they would be really impressed. And I think that they would value the amount of traffic that they send towards it. I hope that answers your question. I think just this site has a lot of value, and I think it's something that you can definitely build off of without having to worry about a shaky foundation.
Nice. Well, you've certainly provided a lot of valuable and detailed answers here. But is there anything you'd like to add that you think I might have missed during this interview?
I think you covered it. And one of the parts of the support, I would also be very willing to go over more in depth some of the strategies I would use if I were to continue running the site, knowing what I know now. So yeah, we can definitely include that in the support part.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that said, I think that's the perfect place to wrap this up. So, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story and joining us on today's episode. And yeah, I hope your business is purchased in the near future and by the right buyer.
Hey, appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 58268. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.